This will be a good one.
It'll be a good one.
Definitely a different type of process.
Cut down or freeze up.
Being a coach's son.
Jackson, of course, they keep retooling. One stolen base, a hit by pitch. Oh my goodness.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hitting Zone podcast. That's where we get baseball topics and we crush them. It's been a while since I've been in the studio. I think the last time I was actually in this studio, I might have had this gentleman over here to my left in with me. It's been that long. We've done our winter workout tours. Those are over. Those are available for you to go check out. We've done some podcasts with those, but you have to go to Youth Baseball Midwest to check those out. So make sure you go to their YouTube page. You got to hit the subscribe, hit the dingers for notifications. You have to get those. You have to do the dinger, right, to get the notifications. So make sure that that is on through your phone settings too. Android, I can help you. iPhone, I cannot. I am an Android user. Big shout out to Game 7 Baseball, game7baseball.com. They have their tournaments listed throughout the whole summer. You need to go check them out. Specifically the Super 7. We're in it for our 14U team. This is YBM's and Game 7's Super 7. I'm excited about this event. It's loaded. It's an open event, so it's got everything from AA teams to AAA teams, which we're going to talk about today. That status of AA, AAA.
Buckle up.
Yeah, let's go. I hear buckle up, man. I need an extra large buckle, but I'm ready for it.
We might need an extender, but we're gonna buckle.
So far, I'm good, man. I just tuck it under my belly when I get on a plane. It is uncomfortable if I'm on a long ride.
Yes, I experienced that about 10 years ago. We had to double buckle before I finally got my fat butt in the gym and got in shape. So
this is what. I think it's because the weather's broke that.
Let's go. It's exciting.
I mean, we're in shorts.
Giddy.
I just woke up, so I just got out of bed and put last night's clothes on.
Love it.
But anyways,
recycle.
I wore a fresh hat for Easter's coming up, so I figured I got my Easter egg hat on.
He's formal, but he's here to party.
Prime Sports Midwest. Make sure you go check them out down south and in the triplex in St. Peter's. 1550 or something like, I don't know what it is. It's on Ocello. It's down in Fenton. Then we have the one in St. Peter's. It has a number to it. Google works great. Go get their SEOs up so that you can search them. But I'm excited about this episode, getting back in the building, talking youth baseball. Last week, if you caught a little bit of the show, we had talked about rankings, ranking athletes, ranking teams, the levels of AA, AAA, single A, all that stuff. And that's what we're going to talk about with this man to my left. I know that you've introduced yourself to fans of the Hitting Zone podcast, but if you can reintroduce yourself.
Shane Eames, Premier Hitting Development, and I'm very excited to be here.
You're always excited.
Let's go. It's baseball. How do you not get excited?
Yeah, weather's great.
Yeah, we hadn't seen the sun in weeks, and now we have, and it's refreshing.
Yeah, Cardinals released their lineup, has Quinn Matthews on the bump to start, and has J.J. Weatherholt back in the lineup, Thomas Ajacey at third. So we're seeing some young guys get their chances, which is kind of what we've been hoping for.
If they're going to talk about a rebuild and a reboot, then they need to play the kids and let them develop and see what they're. The talent level's there. They're very athletic.
Man.
A lot of speed-based guys. Hopefully they can just continue to grow and get better, but they need time.
Yeah, this Weatherholt kid, I'm excited for.
Oh.
The unfortunate part is there's no real place for him right now.
Not right now.
On the team. Even if they traded Nolan Arenado, which is still in the mix, there's still no spot for him.
Right.
And he's such a young, talented hitter and player. I'm excited for that. But again, the Tommy win. That's the coach for 5PA.
Mason Wynn?
Yeah, Mason Wynn.
There we go.
Tommy was in the facility last night, so that's where I went. I apologize. Tommy, shout out to you guys for practice last night. But Mason Wynn, the Thomas Ajacey's of the world, I'm excited to see what a full year of Victor Scott. We've been talking about it a lot on Facebook, kind of just going back and forth. about guys like Jordan Walker. A lot of
Right.
people think that guy's done and the Cardinals ruined him.
You can't count that guy out. He's too athletic. He's just gifted. So
Yeah, still 22, right?
absolutely.
So I'm excited for 600 at bats,
right.
25 plus homers.
He's got to get it. And I'm saying he's going to hit between 15 and 20 home runs this year, which would be a breakout year for him.
You think so?
But it's all about him just getting an opportunity and just staying in the big leagues.
You think that's a 15 and 20 with like 25 doubles and hitting like 280-ish?
I don't think he'll hit 280. I think he'll probably hit 240 to 260, but that's a solid year from him. And he can something to build on and gain some confidence with.
Yeah.
And more so than anything, it's just he needs consistent reps.
Yeah, he's
a tremendously hard worker. He's worked a lot on his defense, and the capabilities are endless with him, but he has to have an opportunity. And I'm okay with the Cardinals struggling. I really am. If they're involved with, let's be all in to develop this thing, and if it takes 3 or 4 years, so be it. But they have the talent level to succeed. They might have to go out and get a couple components here and there as they grow.
Yeah.
But I'm on board with that.
Yeah, this is, I think, something different over the last 20 years for us, because when La Russa was here, his whole thing was not youth. He wanted to trade
he wanted
youth.
the veterans immediately.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you saw that growth. And there was always role player guys. I don't know, other than Chris Carpenter, which when he came here was an injured guy, but, he obviously pitched above his level when he was in Toronto. You had guys like Kyle Loesch that came here and did well.
Right.
Supan did well here. Lackey, all these moves that were made for these veterans, we kind of got upset about because they were taking youth spots. And now it's just, this is something that probably should have been done 5 or 6 years ago.
Agreed.
And maybe we're not so rambunctious as fans, but I'm excited for
I think it would have
JW.
played out better if we would have done it sooner, instead of trying to find a couple veterans at the deadline and you only make the wild card, you get bounced out in the first round. The fan bases, they're not happy with that.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
let's be on board with rebuilding this thing and get back to a prominent franchise and just being successful.
Yeah, be honest with us. I think that's what every fan's complaint is about Mo, is they felt like it was just all secured to the chest, and
Sure.
we couldn't give
There's
no
no
information.
transparency. Yeah. They're just, when you're transparent with people on what you want to do and stop saying that we're going to want to win this year and our goal is to win the World Series. Well, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Just be honest with people. I mean, that's it. I mean,
Even the Miami Marlins goal is to go out and win a World Series.
Right.
I mean, that's
Sure.
that's how they
if it
walk
isn't
into
the
spring
goal,
training.
then, why are you there? But, I mean, you also have to be realistic.
So transparency, let's talk about this, because obviously this is Youth Baseball Midwest is our host, right, and of the Hitting Zone here, and we're talking about levels of athletes. We're talking about professionals that had to work from these AA and AAA levels, and you told me to buckle up, so I'm ready for this. I want you to be about as transparent as you can.
I'm going to be very transparent, and I'm going to keep it classy, but we're going to be very transparent with things.
How do you feel about designations for youth athletes? I'm gonna use the 10U to 12U, maybe 13U level.
Okay.
Because I think at 14, once we get to 60-90,
Yes.
that starts to separate itself
Absolutely.
already. So the 13U level, 10 to 13. How do you feel about designations of athletes, the AA, AAA level kids, major, whatever you want to add?
I have no problem with the classifications. It's. I think it gives kids an opportunity who may be underdeveloped at a young age to develop and get better and just hone a skill set, but be on the field. So when you try to put together rosters, and you might have a couple of really good high level, maybe AA or higher AAA, even a couple major guys, but you only have 2, you're loading them around with AA players, and then all of a sudden a year later those guys are going. So I think if you can start at a level and develop that and progress through that, I think it's a good thing. But it's a slippery slope when you when we get into the differences. I mean, single A players are going to be your rec players.
Mhm.
Double A players are going to be maybe some lower level clubs to start with that might have some physical capabilities and get better. But everything kind of evolves eventually, and you do see some diversity with that. But I mean, it's a tricky slope with all these classifications and player rankings and how they do things now. But I have no problem with them.
Yeah.
I just think if you're a AA guy, then it's all about consistency. How are you going to get to the AAA level? You got to get more consistent. You got to get a little bigger, a little stronger. Your skill sets need to be honed a little bit more. Maybe you need to throw more strikes consistently. Maybe we need to be on the barrel a little bit more. And then in a year or two, then move up. But a lot of people just, they want to get to that level immediately. And some guys physically just can't get that. Doesn't mean they don't have a good skill set, but it's all about physical maturity at this. So, I mean, the athletes are maturing very quick, but some guys don't. And you don't want to give up on that. So I don't want a kid who might be a AA guy on a AAA roster that's not playing very much, because let's talk about youth sports now. It's pretty cutthroat. I've seen numerous, 10 through 12 teams that you might play during pool play, but their bat 9, play 9 comes Sunday.
Yeah.
And for a 10 or 11-year-old to swallow that's a tough pill to swallow for the kid, but it's a very tough pill to swallow for his parents. So why put him in that situation? Let him go down to AA, let him play on a consistent basis, and then make the move. They're 10 or 11 or 12, folks. What is their player ranking about? It's meaningless. Nobody's getting recruited at 12.
Does that go with wins and losses too? Is it kind of this in the same category? Like when we're thinking about teams and playing for these teams, what I'm hearing is that like the big thing is how are we developing these athletes? And so maturity, it matters. And we were talking about it the other day, Brian and I. And before I always it's an IQ thing. It's an IQ thing. And I was stuck on that, right? And then now having the experience of going back down through the youth and coaching that back up, I'm seeing the gaps between there's a 10-year-old kid that's really good and a 10-year-old kid that has potential, right? What is the biggest difference? This kid has grown 3 inches because he hit maturity.
It's all about physicality.
And he's a little bit tough,
right.
A little bit stronger, not tougher, but stronger.
Right.
And so what I'm seeing is when families see that, what I'm noticing is that they want to leave immediately.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean wherever you go that's new, that you're going to be now that guy anymore. Right. You're going to be somewhere on that back end. And some parents are like, yeah, that's what I want for my kid. And I'm like, but does your kid want that?
Right.
So do you think like some of these decisions, like with the wins and losses, like how important are wins and losses in this same conversation?
To some families, wins and losses mean everything. And that could mean the difference between them wanting to leave and their child might be the big fish in the small pond. But the team is mediocre maybe. They're a 500 ball club and they see other teams on Sundays getting trophies, social media posts. I want to be on that position right there. I want to bump my chest and be proud and let the whole social media world know, because that's what it's about right now. Clicks. How many pictures can I post with a 25-cent medal around my neck to justify what's going on? And for me, it's this is a crucial part of the time for them to develop. But a lot of people want to gravitate to being on more successful teams and not really making development the forefront because they want that glory. And I get it. I understand. I mean, I thought it's awesome to see my kids in a successful place to get those items that they can cherish, the rings now, the medals, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, what are they going to be like at 15, 16, 17? To define development is another tricky word because, a lot of clubs and a lot of individuals get recruited based on their physical traits, not necessarily, the development aspect. A lot of kids develop fast early and they're very successful because they're bigger, stronger, and faster. And let's see, let's face it, the pitching when they're younger, they're taught to throw strikes. So where's the ball at? It's going to be more in the middle of the plate, and the physical guys are going to be able to handle that. They don't mind the velo because they can still manipulate that with a $500 weapon of mass destruction, and they'll do damage. But what happens when now at 16 years old, they're no longer the biggest, the strongest, and fastest. They're just another guy. How much have you really developed at a young age when you were physically more mature than everybody else and got bumped up at a rapid rate compared to the kids who are not as physically gifted but had to work harder, not only just on making their body better, but their skill set better. Yeah. So, some kids start at a young age and really rise to the top. But how many 10-year-olds do you see not rise to the top at 13, 14 because they didn't develop the skill sets necessary to continue to evolve? Yeah. And I've had clients do it. It's tough.
Being a high school coach, I've been able to see where these kids, being in the area for a long time, I'm a Timberland guy, right? So I've been in the GACs for a long time. We know how tough that conference is. I've been paying attention to the newspapers. You can go back to Detweiler days. When we first
Tim Melville days.
Yeah, all of those guys that were out here. And a lot of those guys, you have conversations with them. And so let's say they're in the mid 90s right now. Ask them what they were at 14 years old. They weren't 90 at 14 years old. They might have been 78, 79, 15, 16. They were
Right.
kind of in the same range. They found the gym. They found the desires to be in there, the way they competed with themselves in the gym,
Mhm.
you know, to be there, show up every day, be consistent. That's one of the things we talk about on the hitting side all the time, is, right? Show up, be consistent, and good things will happen. It's a law of
Absolutely.
averages, right? So when I have these conversations, that's 20 years ago. You know, it's 2005. I think Detweiler and all them were kind of running through Wentzville Holt School District, and so, you know, and I think about this, I'm like, why are we having 11-year-olds who are premier 11-year-old kids, which they are, they're pretty good, but when they get 13, they forget that they're still supposed to work.
Right.
And so again, tricky, slippery slope things developing.
Right.
You can't stop working. If you are mature right now, you need to maintain that maturity level, and you need to continue to grow,
Or you're getting passed up.
because ultimately that's what will happen. And I'm seeing that at, like, it changes really at the sophomore level to
Right.
junior level, because now we're talking varsity baseball.
Right.
Most of your coaches are not taking a junior and putting them on the JV
Not
level
anymore.
because they won't
Right.
keep them as a senior.
Right.
And so it's like, you have to continue to develop you. And sometimes that's not skill set. Sometimes
Right.
it's literally your body.
Absolutely.
It's hard to be 140 pounds and go out and compete.
Right. And this, you know, I mean, and you really see it with the bats more than anything, because you'll see a lot of kids dominate at a very young age level, and they didn't get better to evolve to catch up to higher level velocity, the spin rate, the command, and all of a sudden they become POs.
Or irrelevant.
Absolutely.
that's what I'm seeing, and it's hard to get and having younger kids. And I'm not calling out my families. I just use my organization as like an scapegoat, if you
Sure,
will, for like
sure.
the conversation, because I don't want to call out anybody, right? But if we have groups that at 11 years old, they're telling their coaches, or 10, 11 years old, telling their coaches, well, I'm going to go over here and play because they are playing deeper on Sundays, but they have a coach over there that has just a group of talented kids.
Sure.
Which is fine. They can
Right.
do their thing. But how is that kid getting pushed to continue to work on his craft, which is his body? And you don't have to push weights at 11 years old. I'm
No.
not saying that. But we can run and jump.
Sure.
We can do things.
A lot
that
of
make
body
us-
weight stuff you can do, a lot of resistance band stuff that you can
100%.
do, but really more than anything is develop mobility and flexibility.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's so funny because there's two things I want to talk about, and one of them is about this mobility thing. Spring training's happening right now.
Mhm.
Those players are out there 2 hours before they even do anything at 1 o'clock, literally going through mobility stuff.
Yes.
A high school kid is literally telling me, I have high school kids, this is dumb. This is dumb to do. And I go, touch your toes.
And they can't do
They
it.
can't touch their toes.
Right.
I can touch my toes. I'm 300 pounds. I can touch my toes.
Right.
And how can I touch my toes? Well, I care about my hips because my hips hurt.
Exactly.
My back hurts. So I have to be mobile in order
Mhm.
to do my job as a coach, to be able to run with them when I'm trying to
Absolutely.
wheel kids at third base, whatever the case may be. And they're telling me it's dumb. So they don't buy in.
Right.
And then even in a 12-week period, which in the big grant, I mean, it's a long time, but it's not, right? They get surpassed. And they're wondering why they still throw 82, 83, and some of the other guys are throwing 84, 85, or, gain 5 or 6 miles an hour on exit speeds. And I'm like, well, they're more athletic than you. How did they get there? They cared about their mobility. They cared about their agility training. They cared more about the small details than just going in and taking reps.
Mhm.
We talk about this all the time. We are not just guys that throw reps.
No, that's activity.
Yeah.
Just being active doesn't necessarily mean you're going to achieve anything.
Exactly. And so I'm seeing them on the TV, and it's like, if that's the chase, like if that's the end goal for all of us that have these big dreams, why wouldn't I want to do exactly what they're doing?
Absolutely. Well, the problem is it's not introduced to them at a young age. It's not the culture at a young age. Some programs do it religiously, and there are a number of programs that I see that I watch practice that I've got a high level respect for, because I see 8 and 9-year-olds going through an active warm up, but the coaches are doing it with them. And then you'll look at other spectrums and you see the team gravitate over there and they're told to stretch on their own. How does a 9-year-old know how to stretch himself out? He doesn't know mobility and flexibility exercises. So, I think a lot of programs take it with a grain of salt. But I think if you can establish that culture at a young age and get them to buy in at 9 years old, at 14, they don't think it's dumb anymore.
Yeah.
Because they're continuing to get better and perform better, but they're also staying healthier.
It's become our routine too, right? And it's what we're
It
creatures
has to
of
be a
habit.
routine. It has to be, I talk to my hitters all the time about having a pre-swing routine. Before you step in the cage, you need to get some movement pattern work. You need to roll out. You need to stretch. So, my guys show up for a 6 o'clock lesson at 5:40. Now they're out, when they step in the cage at 6 o'clock, they're ready to hit.
Yeah.
We've got a game plan to go, but and not every guy will show up at 5:40 for a 6 o'clock lesson. Some families show up at 5:59. Some show up 6:01.
Yeah. Well, how's
If you're
it
on
work,
time,
though?
you're late.
Well, how does it work though? Because it takes 15 minutes. I just got there. I need a few more swings. It's my first swing of the day. It's like,
Right.
From your, I always felt that if I was going to step foot in the bat, or, in the box to swing, even in my BP sessions or training sessions, I'm like, my first swing needs to be as good as my
It's got to be
last swing.
crisp. Absolutely.
And I don't want to walk in there with like, I need to stretch my back out after I take one swing, because then I'm wasting time. And then
Right.
we have to spend 15 minutes of getting them loose
Right.
when we have all of this space. Like, go get your body moving. If you want, go walk up and down the street,
Yep.
whatever the case may be. And that we take that for granted, and we see injuries from guys that don't do this often. We see nagging stuff like the
Groin,
nagging
hamstring.
Yeah, this stuff just won't go
just
away.
little bitty things like that.
And it impacts us long term,
Big time.
because we have tryouts for our high school kids coming up,
Mhm.
and coach, my hammy's sore. Well, what have you been doing all winter long?
Might be lifting, but you're not really stretching a whole lot.
Man,
Numerous players that I work with now go to yoga. They're going to Pilates. It's that trend is starting to uptick with a lot of my higher level high school players, college players. The professional athletes that I work with during the off season. Hey, well, can we hit at 11 o'clock? But I've got Pilates at at 9:30. Can we? So that whole day is structured around their performance.
Yeah.
But people don't get to see what they do. They only see what's happening on the field.
Is that the downside to social media?
I think it is. I think that's the downside of, in my opinion, Major League Baseball not putting out that type of content. I think it would gravitate to longer term success for athletes if people could really see what these guys do. Why not put together a documentary series? How many documentaries on Netflix are there? Why not take them through an off season of a high level athlete, a 7 or 8 part series of this is the day in the life of this big leaguer, this perennial all-star. This is how he prepares his meals. This is how he gets up every morning. Here's the regimen that he goes through. Now you can understand why this guy's just signed a $700 million contract.
It's not sexy enough, though.
Well, that's just it. They only want to see the sexy stuff, but that's why kids at 14 think it's stupid to stretch.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree. Did you see the bat flip the other day in spring training?
Did I ever?
Okay, so kids are talking about that, right? So of course I shared it because I'm old fashioned. That's
Sure.
a little too much. Now,
And he apologized,
he did.
and he was excited, but that's the day and age of this game.
Michigan's coach. This was on either Instagram or Facebook. The Michigan Wolverines baseball team
Mhm.
had the coach was in there in the gym working out. They did a little interview with him and talking about the players that he recruits, which is kind of what we're talking about, kind of the growth from the AA, AAA, and how the maturity is a big factor and the long-term development. And he said, we will take kids that we could have a 17-year-old kid that throws 92. It's 100% max effort. He's 92. We might take a kid, then he's 5 foot, say 11 and 190 pounds or something. I don't remember the exacts to that. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I'll take a kid that's 6'2", that might throw 85, that has projectability because he hasn't been in our gym. And I'm thinking, I'm hearing this, I'm going, we've been saying this to our athletes, get into the gym. You want to throw harder, you want to hit harder, you want to run faster. I need you to be in the gym. And I'm not saying that you have to squat 600 pounds and do all these different things, but we do have to build to withstand these things that we're asking of our athletes. And I'm hearing this and I'm going, here is a high level program. Like Michigan is one of them top baseball programs, and it has for the last few years at least. And this coach is literally telling you, you need to lift, you need to you need to worry about your diet, the carbs, the fats and the proteins and these things that when we get our age, like, I don't want sugar anymore because
Right.
this is what sugar gets you, you
Right.
know? And so they're like, well, we want this at this age because we're trying to get you 15 to 20 pounds heavier.
Sure.
We want you to build into this
The
athlete.
key thing that you said was, max effort. If you're maxing your effort and you're maxed out at 92, what is your growth going to be from there? Is it really, if you're maxing out at 92 and you're throwing as hard as you can with that type of intent and effort, that ceiling is not very high.
Yeah.
When you got a 6'2" guy who's free and easy at 84 to 87, that guy's going to continue to go because it's not a maximum grunt effort.
Yep.
It's free, it's clean, it's easy. I want that guy all day long. It's not that I don't like 92, but 92 with max effort means minimal strikes and a maximum possibility of getting injured.
Yep. And it's exactly what he talked about. And I shared that. And the reason I brought that up was because the bat flip has got whatever million views or something on it, because it's obviously getting circled. This conversation about this coach, I shared it with my whole team and all of our high school kids, and it's like I got 3 likes from it.
Right.
And I'm like, and I'm not doing it for the likes. I'm doing it for the message,
100%.
right? So that it validates what we're trying to do internally. And I'm like, where did we miss?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is where we miss at the 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, because we're not going in there having that structure. We're not requiring our kids to do the mobility training. Sure, the first few weeks of doing it for us this year was tough. The kids didn't like it. Now we take a board in. So we have a board. Here's your structure. They go in.
Fantastic.
They grab the board. Most of it they don't even need. The only thing that they need is because every 2 weeks we change up our mobility routine.
Mm-hmm.
So we ankles, knees, hips, lower back, upper back. We mix in our shoulders on pitching days. Things are different on certain days. They literally grab the board and run it. It's so smooth that you can give a board to an 11-year-old kid and they're leading themselves. And what makes me feel good as a coach is like the first 4 weeks used to drive me bonkers.
Right.
Come on, let's get, we got to focus on now they want to. And
Absolutely.
You talked about it.
And at 16, they'll never have to be told to be here early enough to get their body ready, because that's part of that culture.
Yep.
It's to this day. I mean, with my kids growing up in the dugout and understanding that you're on time, you're late. I didn't have very many rules, but you need to be here ready to go. We call a practice at 6 p.m. We're on the field ready to practice. If you're still putting cleats on at 6 p.m., we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, we're late.
You're going to get one get out of jail free card. And after that, you are going to change your running shoes to put those on, and then you're going to do some work.
Yeah, that perception's so funny to me because one, my lovely ADHD makes me on time none of the time. I was actually shocked. I was here like 8 minutes early today, but
I was here at 10:55.
I could see that.
Yep.
And my kids are like that. They get that from their mom's side, not me. But I coached 8 years of college ball. And 4 years, I had 2 different coaches and head coaches. And one was like, if I call practice at 6, if you're, not there by 5:45, you're late, whatever. Our other coach was like, be there at 6. Don't show up 15 minutes early.
No. Be
there at 6 o'clock. And it wasn't to be ready at 6 o'clock. Practice actually started at 6:15. That's what.
Bingo.
But that was her perception of time. And I always people will say that and it just drives me bonkers. And I'm like, man, time is something that I don't have a very conscious awareness of. I try to do a good job on game days. Try to do a good job on practice. But as a business owner, man, I'll be on the phone and I can't shut it off. Say, I got something I got to do. Right. I got to finish the conversations. And, I think that's another thing. Again, having a kid last night, 11 years old, we had to cancel practice. One of our catching coach was ill last night. He's getting over the flu and he's kind of at the end. And our backup coach had the flu. And so nobody was available for our 7 o'clock hour. So we canceled practice. Well, some of those kids were already there. That was 30 minutes early. And I'm like, you know what? I got that hour still. We're going to go through our mobility training. We're working on a little bit of receiving. So at least they get an hour in. You know what they did at that 7 o'clock hour? Went and did everything themselves.
That's fantastic.
Everything that we've been working on for 8 weeks, they went over there and did that themselves. To me, that's the separators that you'll see on the future growth
Absolutely.
of this AA, AAA, or major athlete,
Mm-hmm.
some of those kids went home. Some of those kids are really behind.
Right.
It shows why.
Sure.
That one kid stayed there. I don't know. He must have been there for 2.5 hours. He's 11 years old.
Right.
In the cage by himself,
And
just
you love
hanging.
it.
He's just hanging out with me.
Sure. You just love to see that.
Yeah, and I'm like,
But that
dude, this
will
is awesome.
that will carry them throughout their entire career. Or with some players that start out at a certain level and gravitate because they've matured, they've gotten better, get to that level. They are behind when it comes to little detailed things like that.
That's a personal desire, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not. Parents, I know that parents can tell the kid go to the batting cage, whatever, but that kid has to want to be there in order to make the best out of his day or want to do it consistently.
Absolutely.
Do you think some of that desire is why we see some of the changes as we get to 12, 13, 14 years old on why the development continues for these kids that maybe are maturing a little bit faster than others?
Yes.
This is where we're getting into our D1, high level
Mhm.
D2, D1 athletes versus kind of the mediocre kid that's
Right.
going to the lower ends of all these
Well,
levels?
and you'll see a lot of those kids that do go to the lower ends are the kids that don't want to be at practice. They want to play in the games. You have to embrace the practice and the suck as much as you embrace the reward of playing in a game.
Yeah.
That is the reward of the work, the time, the energy, the effort, the blood, the sweat, the tears. But those are the guys that are going to step on the field and perform immediately and consistently.
Yeah.
A lot of the players that don't gravitate to wanting to be at practice are the guys that are getting passed up at 16, 17, 18 years old because they didn't establish that at a young age. They didn't want to go to practice. They didn't want to do this. They didn't want to do that. Well, I don't feel good today. So I'm just going to skip the weight room.
Yep.
That can't be the mindset. You have to be great at all the little things to be a consistent performer on the field.
Yeah, and the big thing now is obviously where we're at as a country. Like, when you're sick, you don't want kids coming in because we don't know where we're going to be with all these, things that we have
Right.
nowadays that tells us that we, are sick. But I think about that and I'm like, well, I have 100 fever and I'm like, well, I'm not going to go get everybody else sick, but there might be something that I could do,
Right.
and in preparing myself. Where am I at? I've been in bed all day long. So maybe right now would be a good 5-minute stretch. Maybe I get a little bit woozy because my head's a little off, things like that. But the one thing that I wanted out of high school is, I had some friends that were killed in action in the first Gulf War, Marines, and I wanted to be a Marine. And their whole mantra is embrace the suck, or the
You have
Army.
to.
It's like
Right.
this whole thing was embrace these things because of what the end goal is.
Right.
And we're talking years of this
Mhm.
has to happen, not 12 weeks.
Right.
That doesn't make your season. It is literally a 52. That's how many weeks are in the year, right? It's 52
Yeah.
weeks. That it doesn't stop. You go on vacation, take your ball glove with you, have a nice little catch play with your parent
Mhm.
or a friend if you go with your sibling or whatever you have the choice to do. I mean, there's so much that can be done, and this is why there's a small percentage moving on to the next levels,
Right.
and
1%ers.
and a lot of these kids fall off.
You have to sacrifice a lot if you want big results and if you want to get to the end goal of playing at a very good school and then maybe getting an opportunity to play at the professional level. It's not easy.
Yeah,
So you have to sacrifice things, which is a time commitment, your family's time commitment, and you have to be consistent in little things.
yeah, and it's hard too because as a coach, I love the 3-sport athlete or the multi-sport athlete,
Absolutely.
right? And so I'm, it's basketball season right now. So how do you tell a kid like, hey, skip basketball, make sure you come to baseball? I'll never do this, by the way.
Absolutely not. But there's many coaches that do, and that places a big strain
Yeah.
on
So
the
here's
culture and relationships with that stuff too. But it also really ruffles the feathers of a lot of other coaches.
Yeah, so the question always happens, well, what are you doing to get prepared for baseball? We have baseball in a month. You're getting ready to play mid-March. And March apparently is going to be a great month to play versus April, apparently to the Weather
Mm-hmm.
Channel. But I think about that and I'm like, well, what are you doing? I'll ask my athletes this, like, hey, I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks, what are you doing for baseball kind of activities? And they're like, coach, nothing. I'm like, okay, well, when are you going to get started? Because you got games in a few weeks.
Mhm.
Well, I'll get started in a couple of weeks. Basketball's over. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to be behind. So don't get upset. I tell them, I said, don't get upset when you struggle your first few weeks out.
And when you don't get as much playing time as you desire.
Yep, and that's because other kids have been there, right?
Absolutely.
I said, so don't be mad at your coach. To make sure your parents know this too. You
Sure.
know, this is it. You know, I haven't been there, mom and dad. So if I go over the first weekend, let's be patient with me.
Absolutely.
Which is fine. I'm going
Yeah.
to say this is fine. However, it is my job as a coach to make sure that that young player has a task to do at home. So there's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15
Right.
minutes before when you wake up, get your cup of water in you, go get your mobility done.
Right.
I can get that done. It's going to help me in basketball too, right?
Absolutely.
I can go get a couple swings in the garage before I go to school.
Mm-hmm.
I can get a couple swings after I go to school before my base or my basketball practice or before my wrestling practice or something of that nature. There's always time to work. It's just a matter if you want to.
Absolutely.
You want that blue light special, which is your cell phone or your computer screen or
Right.
whatever, or do you want your 15 minutes of work that will prepare you to be ready for
Not
the
many
season?
people are willing to put in that 15 minutes of work.
It's not much.
But that's just it. It's not much, but they'll prioritize other things over that and come up with an excuse versus a solution. So
As parents, should we control that a little bit more?
I would, because I'm investing a lot of money into your development. And we're paying a lot of money to travel, uniforms, equipment, gas money, food money.
Yeah, 'cause it ain't cheap no more.
Once again, protect your investment. But if you're not going to protect that investment, then that's on you as a parent as well. And that's the unfortunate part of it is if you're going to pay the money, then you need to make sure they're doing what they need to do. You know, I mean, I told my kids it's a 1-year agreement every year. You're all in. After that year, if you don't want to do it anymore, then we don't do it, because I'm not going to invest my time and my money and in what we can do to be doing other things unless you're going to be all in. And if you're all in, fantastic. You'll get anything and everything you want. If you're not all in, after that year, we're done.
Yeah. And halfway out the door or halfway inside, that's not how it works. And there's things that I love about social media, because there's these structures and these cultures that you get to see in the college program that I love to see. You don't see this at the major league level, obviously, because I think they're major leaguers and I don't think
Right.
they need to be coached up this way.
No.
The stuff that happens inside the clubhouse, that's players, coaches, things like
Right.
that. That's all. Let's make sure that we maintain our history or whatever,
Right.
and they keep that internal. But on the college side, you're starting to see coaches really discuss culture being built, and it doesn't. And there's players on teams that don't like each other,
Right.
but the culture is so much bigger than two kids wanting to butt heads,
Right.
to create this bad dynamic that it's like, hey, we find ways to make those two players play together.
Right.
They have to have respect for each other. They
On
don't
the
have
field,
to like
you're
each other.
you're brothers. You have to go to bat for each other. Off the field, it is what it is.
The goal is to win.
Absolutely.
It's really the goal is to win at any level. And I know
Sure.
that we talked about it earlier.
Sure.
Like, winning is not a defining who I am as a coach or how I
Right.
prepare. Some of it is just the levels of tournaments I'm playing, or maybe it's the level of my athletes. I
Sure.
don't have maturity. You should see my 14U team. It's small.
Mm-hmm.
I look like I have a 12U team. I have 13U kids bigger than some of my 14U kids, but it goes back to maturity. And these kids are not grown yet. Their parents are 6'2".
It's coming.
It's gonna happen.
But there's
So
that
you're
patience
looking at
factor.
projectability.
And so, I would rather take a team like that you can build on and teach them to play the game of baseball.
Yep.
They're not hitting balls out of the ballpark, but they can move a runner over. They can hit behind a runner. They can situationally hit. They can throw strikes. They can play good defense. They can be very sound with their first and thirds, their pickoffs,
Tough
their
between
bunt
the
coverage.
ears. Yeah, all of
Absolutely.
that.
And then when those physical traits kicked in, how much more of a well-rounded baseball player are you going to have? Where a lot of kids who mature very early, they don't have to worry about doing little things right because they make big thunder with the bat. They throw the ball hard on the mound. They run fast. But have you really learned how to play the game? And that's where you see a lot of guys get passed up too from a standpoint of just baseball IQ.
Yeah.
That's something that's very minimal now, because everybody thinks the harder I can hit a ball, the faster I can throw a ball, the faster I can run, that's going to outweigh my IQ. But especially at higher levels of college baseball and into professional baseball, if you don't have baseball IQ, you're in trouble.
Big time. And we could see that translating in some of our programs. I usually do the GACs. Obviously, I'm in St. Charles
Mm-hmm.
County. I know that you're not out here, but you're obviously familiar because a lot of our athletes head down to you.
Yes.
And I think about these kinds of things, and I'll have a conversation with a kid, and they don't have much knowledge on the history of the game, and we'll ask about different things, but their PBR numbers, and I'm not taking a shot at PBR or anything, but they'll be in the hundreds, exit speeds in the hundreds. They'll throw mid 90s. And I'm thinking to myself, that kid doesn't understand what a PFP is. He doesn't even know what PFP means.
Right.
That drives me bonkers. And that starts, why aren't we doing this at 9 years old? I saw a thing on social media. Joe Kelly talked about his 9U team.
Mm-hmm.
He was poking fun at Garrett Cole about the not covering the base in the World Series. And he goes, I can tell you, my 9-year-old team will not miss that play.
Right.
If the ball goes right side, my pitchers will be on that bag.
Mm-hmm.
And those small details go such a long ways at the end goal, which is most of the time varsity baseball, right? That has got to be everybody's end goal. But when I watch this in the GACs and the top level teams in the GAC conferences, they all have high baseball IQ.
Right.
And the teams that don't have, they're good players, but they don't have the baseball IQ, they struggle to win districts, or they struggle to close out games.
Because they're not good in the little things.
Yeah.
How many balls do you see, when a pitcher gives up a shot in the gap and he's just standing there on the mound watching and not going to back up a base? How many first basemen do you see with a sure double in the gap that they don't make sure that he tags first base and trails the runner?
And it's who's supposed to see that? You know what I mean? And it's the one guy that is supposed to pay attention to these details. And it's like, we get to do a lot of games. We do GAC games of the week and stuff, and we'll sit back and we'll go off air. I'll shut my microphone. I'm like, what are they doing? They're out of position. This is a reason why you guys to take extra bags, and everybody moves up. And I was like, it's such a rookie mistake.
Well, and then you wonder why you look at programs, like Francis Howell and their perennial powerhouse.
We just talked about that yesterday.
It's not just the simple fact that they have good athletes. They have a very good structure and a really good coach who makes them really good in the finer points of the game.
They play baseball.
Absolutely.
And so that used to be always was my thing for the AA, AAA level kids. It was always, for me, it was between the years. And it really, just because, and then I, again, like I said, I've went back to reality and started coaching the youth side again, the 10s, 11s, 12s. And I'm realizing the biggest gap is the body maturity.
Sure.
Because the kid gets to throw harder and he can muscle up some things.
Absolutely.
With these bats, like you said, these mass destruction weapons or weapons of mass destruction. I said that
Boy,
backwards.
are they are.
But
get them at Prime Sports.
Yeah. That's where you get them at.
That's right.
And go to Athletics. You can get their batting gloves to swing those to at Prime Sports Midwest, or you can go online and see them. Nice little plug there. You're welcome. Mitchell Harlan who's I love that guy, by the way. He's such a he's so motivated to work with our young people. It's awesome. But I just think like the 11-year-old kid that I could have a baseball conversation with now that's 14, and I've seen it. That kid has surpassed that young man that was ahead of him at 12.
100%.
And all because they can play baseball.
Right.
The small details. My team hates this, by the way. We have to point to pop-ups. Okay? I thought this was routine. I thought it was always a given. Pitchers especially, foul ball behind your catcher, immediately trying to help them out. When I first started coaching baseball again back at 14U with my group that were getting ready to graduate, we would run for this after a game. If we didn't point, we would run. And my parents were like, that's a lot. That's a lot. It took me 3 years for one play that our catcher thought the ball went to his left, but our whole team was pointing to the other side, corrected it, was able to get underneath it and catch pop-up, right? 3 years down the road of forcing them to point, and the catcher walks in the dugout and goes, thanks, guys.
But it finally happened.
One time. But
it finally happened.
Thousands of baseballs.
And they were prepared for that.
Yep. And it's the one thing, because there's things in this game that will shock us.
Right.
And that we haven't seen before. And so those little things, though, again, when we're talking about a ball up in the air, that's a pop-up versus a line drive, we're helping outfielders out as infielders trying to understand the play.
And going back to rankings, that's the difference between a AA team and a AAA major team is the finer, detailed things. Some of it has to do with the athleticism. But
sure.
It has a lot to do with how they're being brought up as well. So, But you'll also see some teams that were really good and they're major teams, and they get to high school and they get exposed and get beat by lower level teams that they shouldn't be getting beat by because they got out baseballed.
Or they don't make the club anymore.
Absolutely.
They make freshman and JV
Right.
ball, but they may not make the varsity level kid because somebody has outworked them for 5 years.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what helped me as an athlete, was because I was the fat kid on the field, and so I needed to put myself in position to play because I didn't want to sit.
Right.
So I had to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so when those kids, again, I can remember at 10 years old, my next door neighbor whose son was at Howe, their whole family was just great athletes. And I can remember how much better he was than me at like 10, 11 years old. At everything we did, he could shoot basketballs better than me. He could play tennis better than me. Like, we did everything you could do outside. Till I had size on him, and we had to play a little bit of football. Then I was like, oh man, I can actually
now
do
the
some
playing
things
field
better.
starts to get even.
And then I was like, well, how do I get as good as him? That was my first goal, is I wanted to be as good as him. Then I wanted to surpass him. But what happened there was it created competition. Very friendly. We've gotten a few fights, but Tim Shipley, I love you to death, man. And the whole Shipley family. His son was a state champ at Howell, and then went to, I think he's at SLU, pitcher. And that drove us to be the best players we could for our high school. But I had to work a little bit harder, I thought, than he did, because he was just more physically gifted.
Sure.
But it allowed us to play together,
right,
and do great things. But I did surpass some of our friends that were on his team that were better than me. And so naturally we gravitated to each other versus the other kids because they stopped working.
Same mindset.
And so I agree with that in saying, like, that is a big gap between AA and AAA kids. Even as you get into the higher levels, if you stop working, you will get surpassed at some point.
Eventually it'll
by
happen.
somebody, because
it's hard for them to deal with that.
Well, they don't. That's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother topic, because I'm not going to question no parenting skills, because I'm not the greatest parent either. So I can we'll have another conversation on that one.
I
Shane,
look forward to that. Yeah.
That accountability is something that we miss a lot in our sport, and letting our kids deal with failure. And I was going to wrap up the show, but I do want to talk about it for just a second, about accountability in failure. And what I'm seeing now is kind of a change in how we are seeing organizations lead their teams. I know this is something in our group. I had a parent get upset with me early on. You're not helping my kid out. He needs to do this. He needs to do that. And I go, you're right. However, was the big thing that you said here.
Right.
If I continue to teach him, he's only going to rely on me to help him in the games and help me, help him when something happens wrong on the field. He's only going to rely on you to help him out on the field. Nobody's there to help him.
Right.
He is on an island. He has to help himself. So we are teaching kids to fail and deal with failures and love to fail so that they can learn. Because if we're failing, we have to, there's only one way to learn, right? If we did everything.
I don't even consider it failure.
I don't either.
You're learning.
It's always
you succeed or you learn.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about Kobe Bryant he did a thing on 108 or 108 in Park, whatever it was, and he said failure is only a figure of your imagination. It's not real. And he talked about the learning. But anyways, like, I've started to see a change in guard. Like, I have an elite level softball player hitting with me. She's a D1 kid, high level. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I said, I gave you the tools. You're not wanting to change. You're not wanting to adapt. You're not wanting to feel. You just want to go back to what's easy and comfortable.
Yes.
Right? And we always talk about it. Be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
You have to.
And so it happened for 3 weeks. Frustrated, females tend to cry some. And, you have to let them, because they
100%
handle their emotions a little differently.
It's out of passion. They want to do well.
So the last 3 weeks, we're talking mid 80s, upper 80s on some exit numbers. I haven't said a single word. For 3 weeks, it took her to figure it out.
Right.
And the last 3 weeks, smiles ear to ear.
Right.
And I go, how come you're not going backwards? Have you ever thought about this? And I said, imagine if I spent those 3 weeks fixing you and nothing really got fixed. I gave you the information. You fixed it. Now it's sunk in.
How much more rewarding is the results?
Yep. And it's not me doing that. It's
No.
you making adjustments. So if you have the one bad swing, what are you doing? You're stepping out, you're resetting, you refocus, you get
Right.
back in. You're like, Coach, I'm going to go hit from the opposite side now. And so I can flush it. And then they come back and pop, pop, pop. It's
Right.
peppered. And it's like, man, that's gold to me right now.
Mhm.
And watching people fail and doing enough to fix it. And again, it goes back to, I think those are the level of kids as you get older that are your major level players,
Right.
Your elites. And so I guess that's what it's called when you get to the high school level, you're
Right.
elite. But anyways, Shane, how can our fans go check you out on social media? Find
X now, Facebook, very little on Instagram. It's predominantly X and Facebook.
And it's just the Premier Hitting Development,
Yes.
or is it a PhD? I know there's some
Premier Hitting Development. Yeah.
I gotcha. Again, Google always works. So if you can't find them on X, Twitter, Threads, I don't know. I think Threads actually might be Instagram, Facebook. You can go follow us because I know he follows us. So he's probably mutual friends somewhere in there. And then you can go follow him that way. But there's a lot of fun content. I think one of the things that I love to follow Shane about is some of his quotes that he has. I love them. They're honest. And if anything, go to his page to see his quotes because they're humbling too. And I think they make us think as adults. So anything for our young players that are worried about rankings?
It's just a number. It really is. I wouldn't be worried about the rankings. I would be worried about the process and just embracing that. And if you want to be better, you'll get better. If you want more bat speed, you got to get stronger. You want more velocity, you got to get stronger. You want to get faster, you got to get stronger. So, it just embrace that process. The numbers and the statistics are fans to see. In the end of the day, they don't mean a thing until you get to the level that you want to reach.
Yep.
So just, some kids that get very, very wrapped up in the rankings is, they can't get in their head like that.
Parents got to let that go too, right?
100%.
They're the one that probably starts to feed.
Well, it does. And like I said, everybody wants to be proud. Everybody wants to be recognized. But at the end of the day, when you're 10, 11, 12, that should not be the focal point.
Yeah.
Let's lean into creating a culture and a process that's going to make you better at 16, 17, and 18. Get a scholarship, get an education, and go for there.
Yep, Shane, it's always,
yes, sir.
This is one of my favorite hours.
Absolute
Let's do a little
pleasure.
better job on that.
Well, yeah, there we go.
I think I got
Shake and bake.
I got way too close.
Shake and bake.
I was like, hey, give me some fist bumps. He's like, how do I do this?
I just alligator armed him.
I'm a lefty today. That's our top hand.
There we go.
It's one of my favorite hours is having Shane on the show. Again, it's about his honesty. But you got to go follow him. You got to follow us for more material. We're on Instagram, Youth Baseball Midwest. We're on Instagram, X. I think those are the two big ones right now. Go check out some shorts. We got some great material out there. Great shows. We got Darren Sissel on. We have Brett Graves on, Keep Climbing. We just got done with a show you'll see later on with Mulder or before. I'm not sure how that works. After. And some PBR stuff and great content coming out. We got some specials coming up. I'm not telling you about those. That'll be for next week. I'm excited about this one. But again, go follow us, Youth Baseball Midwest, YouTube. You got to subscribe. You got to hit the dinger. That's what I do. That's what he teaches.
That's right.
Right? I can still hit them. I hit 98 the other day.
Good grief.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Off of a tee. I hit it straight in the dirt to explain to everybody how you cheat code the system.
Right. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But I did hit a few line drives after that because I'm an up the middle kind of guy, and I'm still big on my top hand barrel control. But barrel baseballs, man. And but again, Prime Sports Midwest, Game 7 baseball, Goat Athletics. Thank you guys for supporting us, and may you guys all have a great day. Especially with this 70 degrees that's out here.
Thank you, Lord.
Yeah, and God is good.
He's great.
Yep. So have a good one, guys.